This audiobook hands you the self-shift formula so you may author your new self and immediately walk a different path. Through short, repeatable practices, you will shift who you are being so your destiny follows. Change identity, change destiny. Listen now if you are ready to become someone new on purpose. The self-shift formula. You didn't arrive here by accident. Certain pages find certain souls. If this book found you, be sure to like and subscribe to this channel. I'm giving away a free physical copy of this book, packed with ancient wisdom and timeless insight. The details are in the pinned comment, so don't forget to check it out. Introduction. Your identity is not a prison sentence. It's a performance you can direct. Like a master playwright crafting the perfect scene, you hold the power to rewrite, rehearse, and ultimately transform who you are at the deepest level. This isn't mere positive thinking or shallow affirmations. This is about systematically reconstructing your self-concept through deliberate practice and measured action. The self-shift formula provides the framework. Imagination shapes what's possible, feeling makes it real, and decision turns it into lived experience. But here's what most transformation programs miss. Identity change requires an audience. Your new self must be witnessed to become real. Think of it like method acting. The greatest performers don't just memorize lines. They embody their character through subtle shifts in posture, tone, and micro-expressions. Similarly, your identity transformation demands both internal rehearsal and external demonstration. The neural pathways that define your current identity have been carved through years of repetition. To create new ones, you need consistent practice. This is where the power of small public demonstrations comes in. You don't need grand gestures or dramatic declarations. Simple, consistent actions that align with your desired identity create ripples of change in how others perceive and respond to you. These responses then reinforce your internal shift, creating a powerful feedback loop. Each chapter provides a specific technique for this identity reconstruction. You'll learn precise methods for crafting your new narrative, daily rituals for embodying it, and strategic ways to demonstrate it that invite confirming responses from your environment. This isn't about hoping for change. It's about engineering it through deliberate practice. The resistance you'll face isn't just internal doubt. It's the gravitational pull of your established identity patterns. Your current self has momentum, built through years of consistent behavior. Overcoming this inertia requires more than motivation. It demands a systematic approach to rewiring both your internal script and external performance. Your transformation begins with understanding this fundamental truth. Identity is not discovered, it's designed, and you are the architect. Part 1. Awakening the Forbidden Self. Chapter 1. The Whisper of the Hidden Self. Silas Hart's routine at the post office sorting facility had remained unchanged for 7 years. Each night between midnight and dawn, he methodically organized thousands of letters and packages beneath fluorescent lights that hummed like distant bees. But lately, something peculiar kept occurring. Every few nights, tucked between magazines and utility bills, he would find a weathered postcard. The handwriting, elegant yet unfamiliar, addressed him as Professor Hart, a title he had never held. At first, he dismissed these appearances as missorted mail. Yet the postcards persisted, describing lectures he might give, students he might inspire, theories he might explore. The strangest part wasn't the mistake. It was how right it felt, like remembering something he had forgotten rather than discovering something new. Within us all lie whispers of alternative selves. These aren't mere daydreams or fleeting wishes, but persistent signals from versions of our identity-seeking expression. They appear in recurring thoughts that feel more like memory than fantasy. They manifest in physical sensations, a lightness in the chest, a tingling along the spine, an inexplicable surge of energy when encountering certain possibilities. Most critically, they emerge in language. Names we're drawn to, titles that resonate, descriptions that feel more true than our current reality. The key lies in distinguishing between passing whims and authentic identity signals. True identity calls maintain a consistent emotional signature. They return with the same intensity, carrying the same bodily sensations. Unlike temporary desires, they don't fade with time or fulfillment. They deepen. Consider Mabel Crane, who spent her days shelving books at the local library. She began noticing curious margin notes in returned books, always in the same precise handwriting. These annotations seemed to answer questions about art history she hadn't yet voiced, but had long harbored. The Renaissance began in Florence because appeared just as she wondered about its origins. Caravaggio's use of light materialized precisely when she pondered the painter's techniques. These synchronicities weren't coincidences. They were mirrors reflecting her suppressed identity as an art historian, an identity trying to emerge through the cracks of her current life. When you encounter such repeated signals, treat them as invitations rather than intrusions. They are not random thoughts to be dismissed, but doorways to potential evolution. Each one offers a chance to test a small shift in your self-conception. Begin each morning with this simple practice. Take 3 minutes to note one recurring impulse that keeps arising in your life. Record its emotional texture, how it feels in your body when it appears. Then commit to one tiny action that acknowledges this signal. It might be as subtle as borrowing a book on the subject that calls to you, or spending 5 minutes researching a field that repeatedly draws your attention. These micro-actions honor the emerging identity while building bridges between who you are and who you might become. Chapter 2. The Mask You Forgot You Wear. Amos Whitaker moved through the factory floor like a ghost among giants. His calloused hands touched the machinery with unexpected gentleness, his voice dropping to a whisper when addressing the massive lathes and mills. "Easy now," he'd murmur to a temperamental drill press, or, "There you go, beautiful," to a perfectly aligned cut. Yet at home his voice boomed through walls, harsh and demanding, making his children flinch and his wife grow quiet. The masks we wear become so familiar, we forget they're masks at all. Every gesture, every tone of voice, every habitual phrase we use to explain away our behaviors. These are not who we are, but who we've learned to be. They form an intricate web of conditioning, a script we follow without questioning its author. Consider how you speak in different settings. Notice your posture in various rooms. Observe the explanations that spring automatically to your lips when confronted with challenge or change. These patterns were not chosen. They were inherited, absorbed, conditioned through years of repetition until they felt like nature itself. At the downtown diner, Hattie Monroe caught her reflection in the chrome coffee maker one morning. She was smiling, that particular smile that curved her lips just so, crinkling the corners of her eyes in calculated warmth. It was the same smile her mother had worn through 20 years of serving coffee, the same expression she'd seen on countless waitresses before her. In that moment, Hattie realized she had never chosen this smile. It wasn't hers at all. To break free from unconscious patterns, first name the mask you're wearing. Is it the professional mask, with its clipped tones and rigid posture? The social mask, with its ready laughter and carefully measured opinions? By naming it, you create distance, space to observe and choose differently. Each day presents countless opportunities to step out of automatic behavior. The key is to start small, with deliberate 1-minute experiments in new ways of being. Choose a different posture. Speak in a tone you select consciously. Move through space as if you were someone who already embodied the qualities you wish to cultivate. Practice. 3 times throughout your day, set a 1-minute timer. In each of these minutes, adopt a new posture, perhaps shoulders back and head high, or feet planted firmly with hands relaxed. Pair each posture shift with a single phrase that represents who you're becoming. Speak it aloud. I choose my responses. I move with purpose. I speak with clarity. Let your body teach your mind what's possible when you step out of the automatic and into the intentional. Chapter 3. The Story That Casts Your Spell. Theodore Gray sat at his desk, manila folders spread before him like fallen autumn leaves. Each contained performance reviews from his 15 years at the insurance company, a paper trail of limitation. Shows promise but lacks leadership qualities, read one from 2012. Better suited to supporting roles, declared another from 2015. Excellent attention to detail, but not management material, stated the most recent. As he processed claims each day, Theodore found himself shrinking into these words. His shoulders hunched when executives passed his cubicle. His voice softened in meetings until it nearly disappeared. He had become the story others wrote about him. The narratives we inherit about ourselves act as invisible scripts, directing our smallest actions with the precision of a master puppeteer. These stories loop endlessly, creating patterns of behavior that seem fixed and unchangeable. Yet every story can be rewritten, every pattern redesigned. Consider the verbs that shape your self-narrative. Are you struggling or learning? Failing or discovering? Hiding or preparing? The language we use to describe our journey becomes the map that guides our steps. At Memorial Hospital, Nurse Etta Langley discovered a note in her locker after a difficult shift where she had administered the wrong dosage of medication. The error had been caught immediately, no harm done, but shame burned in her chest. The note read, "Today you learned something valuable. Each mistake is a step toward mastery. Tomorrow you will be more precise because of today." The simple reframing transformed Etta's narrative from one of failure to one of growth. Her posture straightened. Her hands moved with renewed confidence. The story had changed, and with it, her entire approach to her work. To rewrite your story, begin with awareness. Notice the recurring themes in your internal narrative. What roles do you automatically assign yourself? What outcomes do you assume are inevitable? Then, with deliberate care, adjust the verbs that drive your story. Transform enduring into choosing, waiting into preparing, hoping into creating. Practice. Take 5 minutes to write your current self-story in present tense. I am someone who. Then identify the dominant theme, perhaps limitation, fear, or uncertainty. Deliberately choose a new theme, growth, discovery, or capability, and rewrite the story. Read this new narrative aloud twice daily, letting the words reshape your understanding of who you are becoming. Chapter 4. Belief, the Architect of Identity. Victor Hale gripped the steering wheel of his city bus, navigating the familiar streets with practiced ease. Each time a passenger stepped aboard, fumbling for change, he found himself repeating the same worn phrase, "I'm not good with money." It had become as automatic as checking his mirrors. Over months, Victor noticed a pattern. His wallet leaked money like a sieve. Bills went unpaid not from lack of funds, but from disorganization. Spare change scattered across his apartment. Even his tips dwindled, as if responding to his constant declaration of financial ineptitude. The truth about beliefs is both simpler and more profound than most realize. They aren't just thoughts. They're the invisible architecture of our lives, the blueprints from which reality constructs itself. Every small belief creates ripples of consequence, building evidence for its own truth. These micro-beliefs compound daily. I'm not a morning person becomes hitting snooze 3 times. I don't handle stress well manifests as tension headaches. The body, mind, and circumstances align to prove our beliefs correct, regardless of whether those beliefs serve us. Clara Potter stood before her high school art class, demonstrating brush techniques while harboring a persistent thought. I can't sell my work. Her paintings accumulated in her garage, untouched and unseen. One morning, she decided to test a different belief, modest but expandable. One person will value this today. She placed a single painting in her classroom, visible but not prominent. By afternoon, a colleague paused to admire it. "Is this for sale?" they asked. The transaction was small, but it cracked open a door that her previous belief had kept firmly shut. The key lies not in forcing yourself to believe the impossible, but in crafting interim beliefs that bridge the gap between current limitations and desired reality. These beliefs must be both believable enough to act upon and ambitious enough to create movement. Instead of leaping from "I'm bad with money" to "I'm a financial genius," try "I'm learning to track my spending." Rather than forcing "I'm confident in all situations," start with "I can handle this next conversation well." Each belief becomes a hypothesis to test, not a declaration to defend. Through small, aligned actions, evidence accumulates. Reality responds not to what we wish to believe, but to what we demonstrate we believe through consistent action. Practice. Choose one provisional belief that feels both reachable and expansive. For 3 days, perform one action that aligns with this belief. Record the outcomes, however small, in a simple log. Watch how reality begins to mirror your new expectation, building proof of possibility one day at a time. Chapter 5. The Law of Identity. As you are, so it becomes. Walter Finch stood behind his teller window each morning, shoulders straight, voice measured, as though already occupying the branch manager's office. He didn't merely process transactions, he studied the art of leadership through each interaction. When elderly Mrs. Davidson needed help balancing her checkbook, he didn't just assist, he guided her with the patience of someone training a future team. When small business owners rushed in before closing, he handled their deposits with the expertise of someone who understood cash flow intimately. Within months, subtle shifts occurred. Corporate clients began requesting his window specifically. The regional manager started nodding hello. Opportunities for special projects landed on his desk with increasing frequency. Reality was responding not to his ambition, but to the identity he was already embodying. The universe operates on a profound but often overlooked principle. Circumstances align with who you are, not what you want. Desire creates movement, but identity creates manifestation. When inner state matches intended outcome, reality has no choice but to conform. This alignment requires precise calibration. Like tuning a radio to eliminate static, you must adjust your inner frequency, your thoughts, posture, speech patterns, until they resonate with your intended reality. The key lies not in hoping or wishing, but in becoming. Beatrice Lowe understood this intuitively. Her small bakery had always offered celebration cakes, but business was sporadic until she made a subtle shift. She began referring to her shop as the place where people come for celebrations. She arranged her display window to tell stories of joy. She greeted customers by asking about their special occasions, even if they were just buying bread. Soon, word spread. Wedding consultations increased. Corporate event planners discovered her. By speaking and acting from the identity of a celebration specialist, she had transformed her business's reality. This principle works because reality responds to signals. When inner identity aligns with outer expression, circumstances naturally reorganize to support this alignment. The key lies in consistency between internal narrative and external demonstration. To activate this principle, establish a daily mirror practice. Spend 2 minutes each morning declaring, with full presence and embodied language, who you are now. Follow this with one small visible action that signals this identity to the world. This might be as simple as rearranging your workspace or changing how you sign emails. The size of the action matters less than its alignment with your declared identity. Chapter 6. Meeting the Divine Mirror. Edwin Marsh had been practicing confidence in his bathroom mirror each morning, rehearsing phrases like, "I provide executive transportation," instead of, "I'm just a driver." At first, it felt hollow, almost laughable. But he maintained the practice, adjusting his posture, keeping his car immaculate, and greeting passengers with the poise of a professional chauffeur. Then the comments started appearing in his reviews. "Feels like having a personal driver," one passenger wrote. "Most professional ride I've had," said another. The mirror of life was reflecting back exactly what he had been rehearsing in private. His inner transformation had become his outer reality. Life operates as an exquisite reflection system. Every interaction, circumstance, and response serves as a mirror, returning precisely what you project through your identity. When colleagues seem dismissive, they're often reflecting your self-doubt. When opportunities appear scarce, they're mirroring your sense of limitation. This mirror principle isn't meant to assign blame, but to provide precise feedback for adjustment. Each reflection offers data for fine-tuning your inner state. The key lies in reading these signals without judgment, using them as calibration tools for your identity work. Ruth Bellamy discovered this principle accidentally. For years, her bookstore had been arranged traditionally, bestsellers at the front, classics in the back. She felt stagnant, and her customers seemed to shuffle through without engagement. One evening, following an inner prompt, she reorganized the shelves to reflect her vision of books as conversation starters. She created unexpected juxtapositions, philosophy next to science fiction, poetry beside business. The next day, something shifted. Customers lingered longer, initiated discussions about unusual book pairings. One morning, she overheard two strangers debating ideas sparked by her creative arrangement. The space had become what she had internally envisioned, a salon for intellectual exchange. Her inner reorganization had manifested in the outer behavior of her patrons. The mirror principle reveals that external change begins with internal shift. Rather than fighting circumstances, adjust your inner state and watch reality reorganize itself accordingly. When you encounter resistance, treat it as feedback about your identity alignment, rather than as an obstacle to overcome. To implement this understanding, maintain a daily reflection log. Each evening, record one significant outer response you received and trace it to its likely inner source. Then, design one small corrective shift for tomorrow. If people seemed distracted during your presentation, note your inner certainty level and adjust your preparation ritual. If a project stalled, examine your commitment signals and modify one visible action. This practice transforms life's feedback from frustration to guidance, creating a powerful loop of continuous refinement and manifestation. Chapter 7. Energetic Signatures and Timelines. Harold Prescott had worked the railway signal box for 23 years, mastering the mechanical ballet of levers and switches that kept trains flowing safely through the night. Over time, he began noticing something peculiar. Each shift carried its own distinct energy signature. The morning shift buzzed with possibility, commuter trains humming with professional ambition. The afternoon brought a mellower frequency, filled with leisure travelers and quiet cargo runs. But the night shift, that's when Harold felt the strongest pulses of potential. One particular evening, he decided to experiment. Instead of his usual methodical movements, he adjusted his rhythm to match the deep, steady pace of the midnight freight trains. He softened his movements, synchronized his breathing with the distant rumble of wheels on rails. Within days, he found himself being offered specialized training for high-speed routes, opportunities that had eluded him for years. The universe speaks in frequencies. Every timeline, every potential future, vibrates at a specific signature. These signatures manifest in voice tonality, movement patterns, and environmental cues. By learning to read and adjust these subtle energetic markers, you can shift onto adjacent timelines carrying enhanced possibilities. Merton Giles discovered this principle through an unplanned experiment in his antique restoration workshop. For years he had worked under harsh fluorescent lights, handling modest pieces from local estate sales. One day, his usual bulb burned out, forcing him to temporarily replace it with a softer, warmer lamp from home. The change seemed minor, yet within weeks his client base transformed. Collectors began bringing in rare pieces, offering higher commissions. The workshop's altered ambiance had shifted his timeline, attracting a different caliber of work. The simple change in lighting had adjusted his workspace's energetic signature, aligning him with an adjacent, more prosperous reality. These vibrational shifts need not be dramatic. Small, intentional adjustments in tone, tempo, or environment can catalyze significant timeline shifts. The key lies in identifying which frequencies resonate most strongly with your desired outcome. This understanding transforms daily life into a laboratory for vibrational testing. Each interaction becomes an opportunity to tune your personal frequency through subtle adjustments in voice, movement, or surroundings. Success leaves traces. Notice which small changes produce the clearest external responses. The practice requires 3 daily check-ins: morning, afternoon, and evening. At each interval, register your current vocal tone, dominant mental image, and make one small environmental adjustment. Track the results for 3 days, noting which modifications generate the most aligned responses. This creates a personal frequency map, revealing your most effective paths to timeline adjustment. Chapter 8. Desire as a secret calling from your future self. Agnes Parker sat at her desk in the community center, surrounded by stacks of program drafts she had written over the past year. Each detailed the same vision, an intergenerational storytelling workshop connecting elderly residents with local teenagers. She had refined the curriculum countless times, calculated budgets, even designed promotional flyers, yet never took steps to implement it. One quiet afternoon, while organizing her files, Agnes discovered her first draft from months ago. As she compared it to her most recent version, she noticed something striking. The core elements remained unchanged despite numerous revisions. This persistence spoke of something deeper than mere planning. It was a signal, a message from a future version of herself already running these workshops. The universe communicates through persistent desires. When certain visions keep resurfacing, they often represent glimpses of adjacent timeline possibilities seeking expression. These signals arrive as recurring thoughts, dreams, or impulses that refuse to fade despite practical obstacles. Learning to distinguish authentic future self signals from temporary wants requires careful observation. True directives maintain their essential form while growing clearer over time. They feel both exciting and somehow familiar, as if remembering something rather than imagining it. Franklin Drew experienced this phenomenon at his small cafe. During quiet moments, he found himself sketching a unique breakfast dish, a savory waffle incorporating local herbs and aged cheese. Before he could add it to the menu, customers began asking if he served something similar. Some even described the exact combination he had been contemplating. This synchronicity revealed how future possibilities can echo backward, creating a resonance that others unconsciously detect. The universe responds not to what we do, but to who we are becoming. When we align with a future identity, reality begins arranging itself to match that frequency. The key lies in translating these signals into immediate, believable action. Rather than forcing dramatic changes, Successful identity shifts begin with small steps that feel natural to both current and desired states. Each microaction builds evidence for the new identity while maintaining authenticity. A desire triage practice creates this bridge. First, write down the persistent desire exactly as it appears. Next, name the future self who has already achieved this reality. Be specific about their characteristics and way of being. Finally, commit to taking one aligned micro-step within the next 24 hours. This step should feel both exciting and entirely doable, proving to yourself and the universe that this new identity is already emerging. Chapter 9. The Shadow of Who You Refuse to Be. Mildred Sloan had worked as a school librarian for 15 years, meticulously organizing and recommending books to eager young readers. Yet one particular volume on public speaking remained untouched on her shelf, its mere presence triggering a flush of shame. Each time a student approached that section, she subtly redirected them elsewhere, protecting herself from confronting what that book represented. One rainy afternoon, alone in the library, Mildred finally picked up the book. As she read, tears welled in her eyes, not from shame, but recognition. The fear she had buried wasn't weakness. It was the guardian of a deeper truth. Within those pages, she discovered stories of others who had transformed their fear of speaking into powerful voices for change. The parts of ourselves we reject become the very gates that guard our greatest potential. These shadows aren't enemies to be vanquished, but messengers carrying vital energy needed for transformation. When we avoid what shames or frightens us, we simultaneously lock away the strength that lies on the other side of that door. Integration begins with gentle acknowledgement. Each trait we've labeled as unwanted serves a protective purpose, born from past experiences or perceived threats. By understanding their original intent, we can redirect their energy toward growth rather than resistance. Otis Randall discovered this truth in his auto repair shop. For years, he had hidden his difficulty with complex technical manuals, viewing it as a professional liability. But when he finally admitted this challenge to his apprentice, something unexpected happened. His need to simplify complicated procedures made him an exceptional teacher, breaking down complex repairs into clear, manageable steps. What he had seen as a weakness became his signature strength. This shadow-to-strength alchemy requires neither force nor rejection. Instead, it asks for curiosity and compassion. Each seemingly negative trait contains within it a positive pole. Perfectionism holds the seed of excellence. Sensitivity carries the gift of intuition. Stubbornness guards determination. The path forward lies not in eliminating these traits, but in understanding their protective wisdom and finding new contexts where they can serve rather than hinder. Through gentle acknowledgement and creative redirection, these former obstacles become stepping stones toward your emerging identity. A 5-minute naming ritual invites this integration. First, name one trait you've rejected. Then, explore its protective intent. How has it served to keep you safe or stable? Finally, identify one small way this trait could support rather than obstruct your desired identity. This practice transforms resistance into resource, allowing all parts of you to contribute to your evolution. Chapter 10. The Threshold of Choice. Judith Marlowe had been a municipal nurse for 12 years, her days filled with routine visits and familiar protocols. One morning, she noticed a flyer for an advanced wound care certification. Though the training would only add one specific skill to her practice, something about it felt monumental. The next day, she found herself pausing at the footbridge leading to the registration office. Taking a deep breath, she crossed it deliberately, each step an acknowledgement that she was walking into a different version of herself. The moment we make a decision, truly make it, all other possibilities collapse into a single, clear path. This collapse isn't about the size of the action, but the definitiveness of the choice. When we understand this, we realize that transformation doesn't require grand gestures, but rather precise, intentional ones that signal both to ourselves and the world that we have crossed a threshold. Your nervous system responds to ritual and ceremony in ways that logic alone cannot match. When you make a promise with ceremonial intent, you create a neural marker that your body recognizes as a point of no return. This is why traditional cultures have always used rites of passage to cement transitions. They understood that the body must be involved in change. Horace Bentley, who had tended the city parks for 2 decades, understood this instinctively. When he decided to shift from working overtime to spending evenings with his family, he didn't just make a mental note. Instead, he chose a young oak sapling and planted it in the park's eastern corner at sunrise. Each morning, as he began his rounds, he would touch its leaves, reinforcing his commitment to leave work at sunset, just as the tree marked time by the sun's rhythm. A promise gains power when it leaves the realm of private intention and takes physical form in the world. The key is to choose an action small enough to be sustainable yet visible enough to create gentle accountability. This isn't about dramatic declarations, but about placing modest markers that remind both you and others of your new direction. The threshold ceremony creates this marker. Take 3 sentences that declare your commitment. Record them in your own voice, speaking with quiet certainty rather than forced enthusiasm. Each morning for 7 days, listen to this recording before you begin your day. This simple ritual builds a bridge between who you have been and who you are becoming, one conscious crossing at a time. Part 2, Crafting the New Energetic Self. Chapter 11. Designing Your Forbidden Identity. In the quiet corner of his shop, Amos Caldwell bent over his workbench, carefully drafting patterns for a client's bespoke suit. For 30 years he had shaped fabric to fit others, but this particular design was different. As he sketched the suit's strong shoulders and clean lines, he noticed his own posture shifting. The pencil in his hand seemed to draw not just a garment, but a new way of moving through the world. By the time he finished the initial draft, he found himself standing straighter, his movements more deliberate, as if the suit he designed had somehow begun tailoring him. You must approach identity design with the same precision a master tailor brings to their craft. Each element, from the words you speak to the way you handle money, must be specified with surgical accuracy. The forbidden identity you sense within requires exact measurements. How does this version of you speak? What does their typical day look like? Which 3 behaviors mark them as distinct? How do they relate to resources and opportunities? The key is to make these specifications small enough to implement immediately. Rather than attempting a complete wardrobe change, select one signature piece you can wear tomorrow. Instead of reinventing your entire schedule, choose one daily ritual that embodies your new identity. Lucille Harper discovered this principle while updating heritage tour maps for her small coastal town. As she redrawn the walking routes, subtly altering the path to include moments of pause at historic viewpoints, she noticed something remarkable. Visitors began moving differently through the streets. A simple adjustment in the map's design had changed not just their route, but their entire experience of the town. Their pace slowed at exactly the points she had designated, their engagement deepening with each carefully placed rest stop. When designing your new identity, think like a cartographer. Create clear waypoints that others can recognize and respond to. The template must be precise enough that you could step into it within the next 48 hours. Specify not the person you hope to become eventually, but the self you could be by sunset tomorrow. The 20-minute identity blueprint exercise crystallizes this approach. First, name your new self with absolute clarity, not a distant ideal, but an identity you could begin embodying today. Next, list 3 signature acts that define this identity. small, observable behaviors that others would notice. Finally, choose one of these acts and perform it publicly before the day ends. This isn't about dramatic transformation, but about precise, immediate embodiment. Chapter 12. The Self-Shift Formula Revealed. Silas Randolph had been fixing televisions for 15 years when he discovered the three-step repair that changed everything. A customer brought in an old set with a flickering picture that other technicians had declared hopeless. Instead of his usual diagnostic approach, Silas found himself drawn to try something different. First, he visualized the perfect picture. Crystal clear, vivid colors. Then, he allowed himself to feel the satisfaction of a successful repair, letting that feeling sink into his hands. Finally, he made a decisive adjustment to the internal components. The screen sparked to life, displaying an image so sharp it drew gasps from waiting customers. The self-shift formula operates with similar precision. Like a master technician, you must first engage your imagination with vivid sensory detail. See, hear, and touch the reality of your chosen identity. This visualization creates the template for transformation. Next, infuse this image with feeling, allowing the emotional resonance to charge every cell of your body. Finally, make a clear decision that collapses all other possibilities, anchoring this new state with a small but visible action in the physical world. Timing is crucial. The formula requires ritual precision, like the mixing of chemicals in a dark room. Too long in imagination breeds fantasy. Too brief in feeling prevents integration. Too delayed in decision loses momentum. Each element must flow into the next with practiced rhythm. Hester Bloom discovered this truth in her flower shop one morning. She had always arranged bouquets by conventional rules, but that day she tried something different. She began by clearly imagining the finished arrangement, letting the vision form completely in her mind. Then she allowed herself to feel the emotional impact the bouquet would have on its recipient. Finally, she made 3 decisive movements, combining flowers in a way she'd never attempted before. That arrangement sold within minutes, and customers ordered duplicates throughout the day. The formula's power lies in its completeness. Imagination without feeling remains theoretical. Feeling without decision stays internal. Decision without public expression lacks accountability. When all 3 elements align, supported by precise timing and a visible anchor, transformation becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Resistance during this process is normal and useful. It provides valuable calibration data. When you feel internal pushback, treat it as feedback helping you adjust the formula's elements to your specific situation. The guided 3-part shift provides a practical framework. Begin with 2 minutes of detailed sensory imagination, fully inhabiting your chosen identity. Follow with 60 seconds of concentrated feeling, allowing the emotional charge to build. Complete the sequence with a spoken decision and 1 small public gesture that makes your shift visible to others. This compact ritual, when executed with precision, creates immediate shifts in both internal state and external reality. Chapter 13. Instant State Shifts. Entering the New You Now. Walter Grady had managed symphony stages for 20 years, ensuring everything ran smoothly behind the scenes. One evening, while arranging chairs before rehearsal, he unconsciously straightened his spine and lifted his chin, a small adjustment he'd learned from watching the conductor. To his amazement, as musicians filtered in, they carried themselves differently. The usual pre-rehearsal chatter quieted, replaced by focused preparation. The entire orchestra's energy had shifted simply because he had changed his physical presence. Your body is the most immediate tool for identity transformation. The wisdom of rapid state change lies not in lengthy contemplation, but in precise physical adjustments. When you alter your posture, breathing pattern, or facial expression, you trigger instantaneous shifts in your nervous system. These changes ripple outward, affecting how others respond to you. A lifted chin activates confidence circuits. Deepened breathing calms anxiety responses. A softened jaw dissolves tension patterns. Each physical shift creates a corresponding psychological state, which can be captured and recalled through simple anchors. A touch to your wrist, a phrase whispered under your breath, a specific way of standing. The key lies in coupling these physiological changes with consistent triggers. When you pair a state with a specific anchor, like touching your thumb to your ring finger while feeling centered, you create a neural shortcut to that state. With practice, the anchor alone becomes enough to recall the desired state in moments. Mabel Thorne discovered this truth while performing on city streets. For years, she'd worn the same pleasant, eager smile while playing her violin. But one afternoon, she experimented with a different expression, more serene, slightly mysterious. Within minutes, the energy of her audience changed. Instead of hurrying past, people lingered. Her collection bowl filled with larger denominations. Through this small facial adjustment, she had accessed a different frequency that attracted a new response. These state change techniques work because they bypass the analytical mind and speak directly to the body's intelligence. When you need to shift into a more powerful identity before an important interaction, you don't have time for lengthy preparation. You need reliable tools that work in seconds. The 5-breath anchor provides exactly this. First, adjust your posture to embody your intended state. Then, perform 5 rhythmic breaths while holding this position. Finally, seal the state with a 2-word phrase that captures its essence. This creates a reliable reset button you can press before any significant moment, whether entering a meeting, making a crucial phone call, or crossing any threshold that requires your highest presence. Practice this sequence until it becomes second nature. Stand as your desired self would stand. Breathe as they would breathe. Speak their words. Your body will remember and reality will respond. Chapter 14. Rehearsing reality before it exists. Theodore Mercer spent his evenings crafting plays in his small apartment above the local hardware store. One Tuesday night, while rehearsing dialogue for his latest work, he noticed something peculiar. The conversation between his characters about a chance meeting that leads to an unexpected business partnership manifested almost verbatim the next morning at his day job. 2 customers, previously strangers, struck up an identical exchange near the paint samples, their words echoing his script with uncanny precision. The mind operates like a theater, continuously running rehearsals that shape our expectations and, consequently, our reality. When you mentally rehearse a scenario with vivid sensory detail, the exact tone of voice, the specific gestures, the precise timing of interactions, you create neural patterns that your brain accepts as lived experience. This acceptance forms a bridge between possibility and manifestation. The key lies in the specificity of your mental rehearsal. Rather than vague visualizations, you must engage all senses: the temperature of the room, the quality of light, the subtle sounds that frame the scene. Include social microcues, the slight nod of recognition, the moment of eye contact, the natural pause in conversation. Your nervous system responds to this detail-rich rehearsal as if it were recording actual memory. Etta Lawson discovered this principle while directing at her local community theater. Preparing for an ambitious production, she organized a dress rehearsal, complete with mock audience members. She instructed her volunteer audience to respond authentically to the performance, creating the energy of a full house. When opening night arrived, the theater filled to capacity, with audience reactions matching precisely those from the rehearsal, down to the timing of laughter and spontaneous applause. This phenomenon demonstrates how focused rehearsal creates a template that reality tends to follow. When you practice a scenario with consistent attention to sensory and social detail, you establish a pattern that draws similar circumstances into your experience. Your nervous system, unable to distinguish between vivid imagination and actual experience, begins to operate as if the rehearsed reality is already established precedent. The 20-minute rehearsal template provides a structured approach to this practice. Begin by staging your entrance, how you'll open the door, the first steps you'll take, the initial impression you'll create. Move through the key interaction, noting every sensory detail, the light, the sounds, the physical sensations that anchor the experience. Finally, rehearse your exit, complete with the feeling of satisfaction as you conclude the scene. Include 2 specific sensory anchors, perhaps the feeling of your feet on the ground and the rhythm of your breath, and 1 visible cue, like straightening your shoulders, that signals your character shift to the world. This mental rehearsal becomes a bridge between your current identity and the one you're stepping into, allowing you to move through the world with the confidence of someone who has already succeeded at what you're about to do. Chapter 15: Rewriting Memory, Redeeming the Past. Victor Lang sat in the dimly lit records room, surrounded by towers of manila folders that held the city's history in their yellowing pages. As he refiled an incident report from 3 years ago, a faded note in the margin caught his eye. Written in blue ink, it offered an entirely different interpretation of events than the one he'd carried in his mind. The alternative perspective transformed what he'd seen as a career setback into a pivotal moment of growth. Memory isn't a fixed recording, but a living document that shifts with each recall. When you access a memory, you temporarily return it to a malleable state, allowing for reconsolidation with new meaning. This process offers a powerful opportunity to rewrite the emotional signature of past events without denying their factual occurrence. The key lies in understanding that memory serves present identity more than historical accuracy. Your mind continuously updates its archives to support who you're becoming, not just who you were. By consciously participating in this natural process, you can transform limiting memories into foundations for growth. 3 elements make this transformation possible. First, alter the emotional charge by finding a new vantage point within the memory. Second, insert fresh meaning that aligns with your emerging identity. Third, rehearse this revised interpretation until it becomes your default recall. Clara Winslow discovered this principle in her ceramic studio. A vase she'd long considered her greatest failure, cracked during its first firing, sat forgotten on a back shelf. One morning she decided to refire it, embracing its flaws. The heat transformed the cracks into brilliant gold-like veins, creating a piece so distinctive that it became her most requested design. The same vessel, viewed through new eyes, revealed hidden potential. This mirrors how memory recontextualization works. The events remain unchanged, but their meaning transforms through conscious reinterpretation. When Clara looked at the vase now, she saw not failure, but the beginning of her signature style. The memory of that initial disappointment became the origin story of her artistic breakthrough. The guided memory rereading practice offers a structured approach to this transformation. Choose one limiting memory that has shaped your self-concept. Rather than trying to erase or deny it, view it through your emerging identity's lens. Write down 3 lessons that serve your growth, recasting the experience as a stepping stone rather than a barrier. This process releases the emotional charge while preserving the wisdom gained. Chapter 16: Embodying Wealth, Love, and Radiance. Walter Pierce stood in his thrift shop, methodically arranging vintage items on the weathered oak shelves. He noticed something peculiar when he positioned certain pieces with deliberate care, treating each item as if it belonged in a high-end boutique. Customers would invariably offer more than his asking price. It wasn't the items that had changed, but rather his relationship to their value. With precise movements, Walter adjusted a tarnished silver tea set, allowing space around it to breathe. His shoulders squared, chin lifted slightly, the posture of someone presenting treasure rather than second-hand goods. Within an hour, a collector purchased the set at triple the marked price, commenting on its exceptional presentation. The universe operates on energetic frequencies that respond to how you position yourself in relation to abundance. Money, love, and presence aren't random windfalls, but rather skills that can be cultivated through consistent daily practice. Each interaction becomes a ritual that either reinforces scarcity or broadcasts abundance. 3 key elements shape this energetic positioning: your pricing language, how you speak about value; your reception posture, how you physically embody worth; and your gratitude shorthand, how you acknowledge abundance. These seemingly small adjustments create powerful shifts in how the world responds to your energy. At the Riverside Flower Market, Beatrice Morris discovered this principle through an unplanned experiment. After rearranging her checkout counter to create more space between customers and the register, she noticed an immediate change. The new flow allowed people to pause, appreciate their purchases, and feel more generous. Average tips increased by 40% within the first week. The shift wasn't about the physical space. It was about the energetic room she'd created for abundance to flow. When Beatrice stopped rushing transactions, treating each exchange as a moment to practice presence, customers naturally aligned with that frequency. This reveals a fundamental truth. Abundance responds not to what you want, but to how you vibrate. Your daily habits either constrict or expand this vibration. The way you handle small amounts directly influences how larger sums find their way to you. The attention you give to brief encounters shapes how deeper connections develop. These principles crystallize into 3 accessible practices that literally rewire how your nervous system processes abundance and scarcity. By performing these rituals consistently, you train your energy field to become a natural attractor for prosperity in all its forms. Through conscious engagement with these practices, the morning gratitude, midday generous act, and evening abundance inventory, you establish new neural pathways that normalize abundance as your default state. The key lies not in the magnitude of these actions, but in their regular execution, creating an unshakable foundation for prosperity consciousness. Chapter 17: Rituals of Remembering Who You Are. Edwin Carter had developed a peculiar morning practice in his retirement. Each day at sunrise, he would place a smooth river stone in his left pocket while reciting 3 words that defined his intended presence for the day. The weight of the stone, cool against his thigh, served as a constant reminder of his chosen identity. Within weeks, neighbors remarked on his newfound steadiness. His gardening became more precise, his conversations more focused, and his daily walks took on an almost meditative quality. The simple act of touching the stone throughout the day brought him back to his morning intention, creating a thread of continuity that transformed scattered hours into purposeful moments. Our deepest transformations often emerge not from grand gestures, but from small, precise rituals that act as doorways to our chosen identity. These compact ceremonies, whether a token carried, a stamp pressed into a journal, or a specific breath pattern, serve as neural shortcuts to our desired state of being. The key lies not in the duration of these practices, but in their precision and consistency. Rather than requiring hours of meditation or elaborate ceremonies, effective identity rituals can be distilled into moments. A 3-breath sequence, a silent word repeated at specific times, or a simple physical gesture can anchor profound shifts when practiced with intention. These micro-rituals become automatic triggers, bypassing the resistance of the conscious mind. At the Sunflower Diner in Millbrook, Ruth Pembroke discovered this principle through an unexpected channel. She began ringing a small brass bell at the start of each service period. The clear tone, lasting just seconds, seemed to align her staff's energy instantly. Servers straightened their postures, cooks centered their focus, and the entire restaurant's atmosphere shifted into a harmonious flow. The bell's ring became more than a signal. It transformed into a shared anchor point, a moment of collective reset that improved service quality and staff morale. Ruth hadn't changed her management style or implemented new procedures. She had simply introduced a precise ritual that automatically recalled everyone to their best selves. This demonstrates how strategic placement of anchor moments throughout the day can accumulate into significant transformation. Each small ritual acts as a stepping stone, creating a bridge between who we are and who we're becoming. The power lies not in the complexity of the practice, but in its ability to instantly recall our chosen identity. Through careful design of morning, midday, and evening anchors, you can create a framework that consistently reinforces your new identity. These moments, though brief, serve as energetic bookends that hold your transformation in place, allowing new patterns to take root naturally. Chapter 18: Doubt, Delay, and the Old Identity's Last Stand. Harold Benson stared at his computer screen, cursor hovering over the send button. The email contained his best wildlife photographs, carefully curated for a prestigious nature magazine. "I'll polish it one more time tomorrow," he thought, closing his laptop. When he finally sent the submission 3 days later, the reply was swift and disappointing. "Thank you for your interest, but our featured photographer slots have been filled." Sitting in his studio surrounded by thousands of stunning images that had never seen publication, Harold realized this wasn't the first time his hesitation had closed doors. Each delay carried the invisible weight of an identity protecting itself from change. Procrastination masquerades as perfectionism, but its true nature is defensive. It serves as a guardian of the current identity, protecting it from the vulnerability of growth and potential rejection. The solution lies not in willpower, but in creating such small commitments that the defensive response cannot engage. The key is to shift from large, intimidating actions to micro-commitments so minimal they bypass internal resistance. These tiny acts, sending one email, making one call, writing one paragraph, accumulate not just progress but proof of a new identity. Each micro-commitment completed becomes evidence against the old story of delay. In a small bakery across town, Merton Caldwell faced his own pattern of postponement. Rather than attempting to master complex pastries immediately, he committed to baking one small batch of basic rolls each morning before the shop opened. No exceptions, no delays. The batch was small enough that failure wouldn't waste resources, yet consistent enough to build skill. Within weeks, his hands knew the proper feel of the dough, and his confidence grew with each successful batch. The small daily commitment had bypassed his perfectionist tendencies and created a foundation for growth. When larger opportunities arose, he met them with practiced competence rather than hesitation. The practice becomes simple yet profound. Choose one small specific action that takes no more than a minute. Perform it at the same time each day, logging or sharing it to create gentle accountability. The action should be so minimal that excuses find no purchase, yet significant enough to represent the identity you're claiming. This 5-day micro-commitment becomes your proof of concept. Each minute invested demonstrates your ability to act despite discomfort, building evidence that counters the old narrative of delay. The key lies not in the size of the action, but in its consistency and non-negotiable nature. Chapter 19: Walking Through the World as the New You. Every morning, Agnes Porter stood at the entrance of Riverside High School, greeting students as they shuffled through the metal doors. For 15 years, she had offered the same practiced welcome. "Good morning, how are you?" But today, something shifted. Instead of the automatic greeting, she paused, made deliberate eye contact, and said quietly, "I see you're ready to create something important today." The change was subtle, yet profound. Students who normally hurried past began to slow, their expressions softening. One girl who rarely spoke actually stopped, sharing her anxiety about an upcoming presentation. By week's end, the morning conversations had transformed from perfunctory exchanges to meaningful connections. Our public presence, the way we carry ourselves, speak, and interact, forms a living broadcast of our identity. Each gesture, word choice, and behavioral pattern sends signals that others unconsciously interpret and respond to. The key lies not in grand gestures, but in precise adjustments to our daily social choreography. Start with your entry points, those moments when you first appear in any social context. These transitions carry extraordinary power because they set the energetic template for what follows. Adjust one element, your greeting, posture, or opening question. Notice how the social field responds. In the downtown business district, Franklin Hayes discovered this principle by accident. As mailroom supervisor, he had always begun his rounds with a brisk efficiency focused on the task. One morning, he decided to pause at each department, taking 3 deep breaths before entering. This small shift in his presence created a ripple effect. Conversations became more measured, exchanges more meaningful. By simply altering his entry routine, he had changed the office's subtle architecture. Consider your social interactions as laboratories for identity refinement. Each conversation offers a chance to trial a slightly different way of being. The key is to make changes small enough to feel authentic, yet distinct enough to test new possibilities. Perhaps you adjust your speaking pace, alter your questioning style, or experiment with different levels of formality. The practice becomes a deliberate exploration. Choose 3 small modifications to your public behavior that align with your emerging identity. Test each one in low-stakes situations where the consequences of awkwardness are minimal. Pay attention not just to others' responses, but to how embodying these changes affects your own sense of self. The daily social experiment contains 3 parts. Morning, adjust one aspect of your greeting or entry behavior. Midday, modify one conversational pattern. Evening, alter one closing interaction. Document the results without judgment, treating each response as valuable data rather than success or failure. This is not about performing a role, but about allowing your inner shifts to find natural expression in the social world. Chapter 20. Quantum Echoes, Reading the Signs of Your Shift. Mildred Hargrove had volunteered at Sunnyside Hospice for 8 years, always approaching her shifts with professional compassion. One morning, after a particularly moving meditation, she decided to view her role differently, not as someone who tended to the dying, but as a witness to life's sacred transitions. She didn't announce this shift to anyone. It was a private reframing in her own heart. Within days, subtle changes began appearing. A patient who hadn't spoken in weeks asked her about butterflies. A family member left a note describing how peaceful their mother seemed during Mildred's visits. The facility director randomly assigned her to cases that seemed to need exactly what she could offer. These weren't dramatic events, but rather gentle nods from the universe, acknowledging her internal shift. Reality speaks in whispers, not shouts. When you alter your inner stance, the world responds with a language of subtle synchronicities, unexpected openings, and small confirmations that verify you're moving in alignment with your emerging identity. The key lies in learning to distinguish genuine pattern from wishful thinking. Otis Winthrop discovered this truth during his rounds as a local courier. After deciding to trust his intuition about route changes instead of rigidly following his GPS, he began noticing meaningful patterns. A last-minute delivery would lead to an important connection. A detour would help him avoid major delays. What others saw as coincidence, he recognized as confirmation of his growing alignment with flow and timing. These subtle signs form a feedback loop between inner state and outer reality. They appear as the art lies in neither dismissing these signs nor inflating their importance. Each one serves as a gentle calibration tool, showing you where your inner shift has taken root and where it needs reinforcement. True synchronicities share common characteristics. The confirmation log becomes your tool for discernment. Each evening, record 3 small signs that appeared during your day. Note the probable inner shift that attracted each one. This practice trains your attention to recognize the subtle language of reality responding to your transformed identity. Through this daily documentation, patterns emerge that reveal which aspects of your identity shift are gaining traction and which need refinement. The signs become your compass, showing you how to adjust your course with precision and grace. Part 3. Mastery and Destiny Rewritten. Chapter 21. Living from the End as a Sacred Art. Percy Alden sat in his modest mediation office, a stark contrast to the imposing courtroom where he'd presided for 30 years. As a volunteer mediator, he noticed how disputes often became entrenched because parties focused on past grievances. One morning, inspired by his judicial experience, he tried something different. Before each session, he spent 5 minutes envisioning the resolution already accomplished, feeling the relief and satisfaction of both parties leaving reconciled. To his amazement, the dynamics began shifting. When he held that completed picture, his questions naturally guided participants towards solutions. A property dispute between neighbors transformed from bitter accusations into a collaborative landscaping plan. A contract disagreement between business partners evolved into a stronger working relationship. The universe responds to the energy of completion more powerfully than to the energy of seeking. When you position yourself at the end point and look back, the path naturally arranges itself. This isn't magical thinking. It's strategic alignment of your nervous system with the outcome you intend to create. Lottie Hayes discovered this principle while coordinating events at the Grand Palace Hotel. Instead of preparing rooms with technical efficiency, she began setting spaces as if the celebration were in full swing. She'd adjust the lighting to match peak evening ambiance, play the planned celebration music softly, and arrange flowers as if guests were already admiring them. The results were immediate and consistent. When guests arrived, they stepped into an energy field already vibrating with celebration. Rather than having to warm up to the occasion, they found themselves instantly participating in its completion. The success wasn't in the physical preparation, but in Lottie's ability to hold and transmit the feeling of fulfillment. This principle transcends simple positive thinking or visualization. It's about occupying the energetic reality of completion while taking aligned action in the present. When you speak, move, and choose from the perspective of the accomplished goal, you naturally attract corresponding circumstances. Success leaves clues in reverse. By living from the end point, you'll notice small daily confirmations that reality is conforming to your completed vision. These signs aren't coincidences, but feedback showing your alignment with the outcome. The 30-day evening consolidation ritual anchors this practice in daily life. Each evening, take 5 minutes to recount the day's events as if speaking from your desired completion point. Note 3 small confirmations that appeared. Perhaps a timely conversation, an unexpected resource, or a subtle shift in how others responded to you. This isn't about forcing events, but about recognizing how reality already supports your aligned identity. Chapter 22. Collapsing Timelines with Unshakable Decision. Chester Monroe stood before the community center's events board, marker poised in his hand. For months, he'd hesitated to commit the center's resources to a major arts initiative, weighing endless possibilities. Today, something shifted. He wrote firmly on the board, "Summer Arts Festival, every Thursday, 6 to 9 p.m. The simple act of publishing those hours triggered a cascade. Within days, local artists began reserving slots. Nearby restaurants adjusted their dinner service timing, and a local foundation offered matching funds. The power of an unambiguous decision lies in its finality. When you remove the possibility of reversal, the universe responds with corresponding clarity. Each hesitation, each maybe, creates an energetic eddy that traps potential in endless circulation. But a clear public declaration acts as a magnet, drawing aligned circumstances toward its certainty. To make such a decision effective, it must be clean of hidden escape clauses. Your nervous system knows the difference between a genuine commitment and a provisional one. The key is to choose a scale of decision that feels both challenging and achievable, then make it publicly irreversible. This commitment must be ritualized to gain full power. Write it in present tense, speak it aloud, and create a visible marker that serves as a constant reminder. The decision gains momentum through witnesses, who act as both supporters and accountability partners. Alma Reed discovered this when she faced declining sales at her independent bookstore. Rather than implementing a series of tentative changes, she posted a single sentence in her window: "We are becoming the city's premier poetry destination." The declaration felt both terrifying and liberating. Within weeks, local poets began requesting reading slots, a writing group asked to meet in her space, and a literary magazine proposed a partnership. The physical act of posting her decision transformed a private intention into a public covenant. The universe responds to such boldness, not because of magical thinking, but because decisive action creates clarity in the field of possibilities. When you remove ambivalence, you eliminate the static that blocks aligned opportunities. A declaration gains power through its form, specific present tense, and witnessed. It must be stripped of hedging language and conditional phrases. The words trying, hoping, and planning to dilute its force. Instead, speak as if the decision is already in effect, because energetically it is. For your declaration ceremony, compose one paragraph that states your irrevocable decision in clear, present-tense language. Record this declaration, speaking with the authority of one who knows the outcome is certain. Then, share this commitment with one trusted witness, who will hold your decision as already accomplished. This ritual collapses the space between intention and manifestation, making your decision a living force in the world. Chapter 23. Relationships Through Your New Identity. Evelyn Whitcomb had attended hundreds of births over her 20 years as a midwife, but something shifted when she altered a simple greeting. Instead of her usual "I'm here to help," she began meeting expectant partners with, "We're stepping into sacred space together." The change was subtle, yet profound. Partners who previously hovered anxiously at the edges of the birthing room began moving with quiet confidence, integrating naturally into the birth team. This small linguistic shift redefined relationships instantly, not through manipulation, but through an energetic invitation that honored deeper capacities in others. When we adjust our identity, we automatically reset the magnetic field of our relationships. Old patterns dissolve not through force, but through the natural reorganization that occurs when we hold ourselves and others differently. The key lies in understanding that relationships are energy contracts, continuously negotiated through subtle cues. Each interaction either reinforces old agreements or opens space for new ones. The art is learning to shift these contracts with grace rather than disruption. Success requires three elements: clear energetic boundaries, specific invitations that honor choice, and deep listening that allows others to evolve at their own pace. When any of these elements is missing, resistance naturally arises. Roscoe Hale discovered this truth when he took over coaching a struggling youth basketball team. Rather than pushing harder at practice, he introduced a new pregame ritual. The team would stand in a circle, each player sharing one strength they saw in the teammate to their right. Initially, the boys shuffled awkwardly, but within weeks, the ritual transformed team dynamics. Players who had been isolated found their voices. Those who dominated began noticing others' contributions. The shift wasn't in the players' skills, but in the relational field that defined them. By creating a container for new ways of seeing each other, Roscoe allowed natural leadership and cooperation to emerge. He didn't force change. He invited it through structured opportunity. This principle works in any relationship. Rather than trying to change others directly, we adjust the energetic space between us. We do this through conscious shifts in our responses, expectations, and ways of holding others in our awareness. The process begins with small, measurable experiments. Choose one relationship where patterns feel stuck. Introduce a single new boundary, not as ultimatum, but as clear preference. Extend one specific invitation that honors the other's agency. Practice one act of deep listening without agenda. These micro-adjustments, practiced consistently, create space for natural evolution in relationships. Others respond not to our demands, but to the shifted field of possibilities we create through our own transformed presence. For the next 7 days, conduct one relational experiment daily. Establish one clear boundary, extend one genuine invitation, and practice one act of deep listening. Track how the energetic field shifts in response to these subtle adjustments. Chapter 24: Money Mission and Mystic Service. Florence Grant's small repair shop had served the neighborhood for decades, but something shifted when she introduced her Mending Circle, a weekly gathering where she taught basic clothing repair for a modest fee. What began as 3 people around her work table grew steadily as participants discovered more than just fixing tiers and replacing buttons. They found community, skill, and a renewed appreciation for the art of preservation. The magic wasn't in the teaching itself, but in how Florence priced her service. Rather than charging by the hour, she asked each participant to contribute what they felt represented the value of learning to care for their belongings. This subtle shift transformed the energy of exchange. Clients began leaving not just payment, but heartfelt notes, homemade treats, and referrals that multiplied her income effortlessly. When we align our offerings with our authentic identity, money flows as a natural expression of energy exchange. The key lies not in pushing services, but in creating spaces where value can be recognized and exchanged freely. Price becomes not a barrier, but a signal of worth, and service transforms into a magnetic force for prosperity. True abundance emerges when we stop selling and start serving from our aligned identity. Each offering becomes a clear channel for energy to flow both ways, creating sustainable cycles of giving and receiving. Ezra Cole discovered this principle when he shifted his approach to selling honey. Instead of simply stocking local stores, he introduced a community jar program where customers could subscribe to monthly honey harvests. Each jar came with a note about the bees' activity that month and the flowers they'd visited. Within weeks, demand exceeded his supply, and neighboring beekeepers asked to join the program. The success wasn't in the honey itself, but in how Ezra's offering aligned with his identity as a steward of bee wisdom. He wasn't selling a product, he was inviting others into a relationship with the natural world. His pricing reflected this deeper value, and customers responded with enthusiasm and loyalty. This transformation reveals the secret. When offerings flow from authentic identity, prosperity follows naturally. The key is designing microservices that allow others to experience the value of your transformed presence. For those ready to apply this wisdom, begin with a 1-month offering plan. List 3 small services that naturally express your new identity. Trial 1 each week, noting both invitations and income. Watch how the universe responds when your offerings align with who you've become. Chapter 25. When reality tests your choice. Nora Winslow's hands trembled as she opened her kiln. The pieces she'd crafted for her gallery launch, delicate porcelain vessels with crystalline glazes, lay ruined before her. A power surge had disrupted the firing cycle, leaving her signature collection destroyed just days before the showing. Yet the next morning, Nora maintained her ritual. She sat at her wheel before dawn, centered a ball of clay, and threw 3 small bowls, not for the gallery, but as her daily practice of presence. As she worked, her phone buzzed. A prestigious craft magazine editor, delayed in town by chance, wanted to feature her process in their autumn issue. When reality seems to contradict our chosen identity, it tests not our worthiness, but our commitment to practice. Each apparent setback offers precise data about adjustments needed while confirming our core direction. The key lies not in avoiding contradiction, but in meeting it with practiced grace. Consider how setbacks register in your system. Do they trigger abandonment of identity or deepen your resolve? The difference lies in whether you've built ritual responses that preserve momentum regardless of external conditions. Gilbert Price understood this when a major electrical contract canceled unexpectedly, leaving a gap in his schedule and income. Rather than scrambling for replacement work, he used the sudden space to complete a custom lighting installation he'd been developing between jobs. The piece caught the attention of an interior designer, leading to a series of high-end commissions that transformed his business model. The pattern reveals itself. What appears as interruption often creates space for deeper alignment. The key is maintaining foundational practices while reading setbacks as guidance rather than rejection. Your new identity isn't measured by unbroken success, but by how quickly you restore your center when pushed off balance. Your relationship with contradiction becomes a crucial marker of transformation. Each challenge offers an opportunity to demonstrate that your identity exists independent of external validation. Through consistent practice, you learn to treat setbacks not as evidence against your path, but as refinements of your approach. When facing apparent contradiction, implement the resilience checklist. Take 3 conscious breaths to center yourself. Recount 3 pieces of evidence that confirm your path. Perform 1 micro-action aligned with your identity. Speak your core promise aloud. Record 1 lesson in your practice journal. These 5 steps ensure that setbacks strengthen rather than derail your transformation, converting each challenge into confirmation of your chosen identity. Chapter 26. Parallel Selves and Infinite Possibilities. Lionel Baker sat in his taxi before dawn, parked at his usual spot outside the train station. Instead of immediately turning on his dispatch radio, he spent the next hour living 3 different morning routines. First, he positioned himself as an executive chauffeur, adjusting his posture and greeting imagined clients with practiced sophistication. Next, he played the role of a neighborhood regular, chatting warmly with familiar faces about local happenings. Finally, he embodied a silent observer, noting the city's rhythms with the detachment of a wandering philosopher. As the morning crowd emerged from the station, Lionel found himself naturally sliding into the second persona, the neighborhood fixture. His shoulders relaxed, his smile became genuine, and the conversations flowed effortlessly. The other roles, while interesting, felt like costumes rather than skin. When we stand at the crossroads of possible selves, the body knows which path rings true. Identity selection isn't merely intellectual, it's a full-body resonance test that reveals our authentic trajectory through subtle signals of ease or resistance. The art lies in learning to read these signals clearly and then systematically amplifying the timeline that calls to us most deeply. This requires both careful attention to internal feedback and deliberate exclusion of competing narratives that disperse our energy. Judith Avery discovered this principle while experimenting with her flower shop's identity. She created 3 distinct window displays, one featuring exotic arrangements for luxury clients, another highlighting everyday bouquets for regular customers, and a third showcasing wild artistic compositions. Over a week, she noticed how she felt preparing each display and which customers naturally gravitated toward them. The artistic display not only drew her ideal clients, but also energized her creative process each morning. This self-selection process reveals that identity choice is less about forcing a direction and more about recognizing which version of ourselves already exists in potential, waiting to be amplified through consistent action. The practice here is precise. Engage with each possible self through direct experience rather than speculation. Notice which version creates the most natural alignment between internal state and external response. Then commit fully to that timeline through small daily acts that reinforce its reality. A 3-self interview. Dedicate 15 minutes to writing out 3 possible versions of yourself. Speak aloud as each version for 5 minutes, noting which feels most natural in voice and energy. Choose one to amplify through 10 small, deliberate acts each day for the next 2 weeks. Chapter 27. The Identity, Death, and Rebirth Cycle. Clarence Fielding stood in his orchard, studying the plot he had deliberately left untended for a season. His workers had questioned his decision, wondering why he would waste productive land. But Clarence understood something about the wisdom of release. Throughout the year, he watched as wild plants took root where his carefully tended apple trees once stood. The soil transformed itself through nature's own mysterious alchemy. When he finally replanted the following spring, the trees bore fruit with a sweetness and vitality that surpassed anything the orchard had previously produced. Through this experience, Clarence discovered that growth requires space created by release. Every ending carries within it the seeds of beginning, but only if we have the courage to embrace the fallow period between. The art of transformation demands more than simply adding new habits or aspirations. It requires ceremonial endings that honor what has served us and clear space for what wishes to emerge. This means creating rituals that acknowledge completion, practicing intentional release of outdated identities, and marking transitions with symbolic acts that engage both heart and body. Hester Lowell, a pattern cutter with 20 years of experience, faced this truth when she realized her traditional designs no longer reflected her evolving artistic vision. For weeks, she continued producing her usual patterns while feeling increasingly disconnected from her work. Finally, she gathered her old templates and, in a private ceremony, burned them one by one while thanking each for what it had taught her. Within days of this ritual ending, a prestigious theater company approached her about creating avant-garde costumes for their upcoming season, work that perfectly aligned with her emerging aesthetic. The space created by her ceremonial ending had allowed a new beginning to find her. This process of intentional completion requires tenderness and courage. We must honor the grief that accompanies genuine endings, while staying open to the mystery of what wishes to be born through us. The key lies in creating sacred containers for both farewell and welcome, understanding that every death contains within it the promise of rebirth. A death and rebirth rite. Begin with a heartfelt letter of gratitude to the identity you're releasing. Perform a symbolic act of letting go, burning the letter, burying an object, or marking the end in some tangible way. Then write a brief covenant with your emerging self, stating what you commit to becoming. Chapter 28. Anchoring the Shift in Daily Life. Sylvia March stood atop the lighthouse tower, polishing the great lens with methodical precision. Each morning at dawn, she followed the same sequence: inspect the mechanism, clean the glass, check the fuel levels, and log the weather conditions. Her predecessor had let these routines slip, leading to unreliable signals that left ships uncertain in the harbor's treacherous waters. Within 3 months of implementing her strict maintenance schedule, captains began remarking on the steadiness of the light. The harbor's accident rate dropped significantly. Through unwavering dedication to these small daily acts, Sylvia had transformed not just the lighthouse's operation, but the safety of an entire maritime community. True transformation requires more than moments of insight or bursts of motivation. It demands a carefully constructed framework of daily practices that slowly reshape our environment and relationships. Each small habit, when consistently performed, acts as a thread in the fabric of our new identity. These anchoring practices must touch 3 crucial domains: our personal routines, our physical space, and our social connections. By adjusting these elements in small but deliberate ways, we create an ecosystem that naturally supports our transformed identity. The most enduring changes often begin with barely noticeable shifts in our daily patterns. A new morning ritual, a rearranged workspace, a slightly different way of greeting colleagues. These micro-adjustments gradually rewrite the script of who we are. Orson Tate, the station master at Millbrook Station, discovered this principle when facing chronic delays in the morning commute. Instead of implementing dramatic schedule changes, he began by simply replacing the platform signage with clearer, more prominent displays. He adjusted the announcement timing by just 2 minutes and rearranged the waiting area furniture to create smoother passenger flow. Within weeks, commuters unconsciously adapted their habits. They positioned themselves differently on the platform, boarded more efficiently, and the entire system began running more punctually, all without a single official schedule change or formal announcement. The key lies in understanding that lasting transformation doesn't require Herculean effort, but rather intelligent design of our daily environment and routines. By creating the right conditions and maintaining them through simple, repeatable practices, we allow our new identity to take root naturally. A 30-day anchoring plan provides the structure for this process. Establish 3 daily touchpoints: a morning ritual to set intention, a midday practice to maintain alignment, and an evening routine to reinforce the shift. Each week, identify and remove one element from your environment that supports the old identity. This gradual pruning, combined with consistent new practices, allows transformation to become automatic rather than effortful. Chapter 29: Becoming a Portal of Transformation for Others. Viola Camden surveyed the school cafeteria with quiet attention. For 15 years, she had managed the busy lunchroom, watching thousands of students pass through its doors. One morning, she began a subtle experiment. Instead of placing food directly on the standard plastic trays, she introduced simple white plates. She arranged fresh fruit in woven baskets rather than metal bins. Small glass containers replaced plastic cups for puddings and fruit cups. The changes were minimal. Yet within days, she noticed something remarkable. Students began lingering longer over their meals. Conversations grew softer. Even the way they carried their trays changed. More deliberate, more mindful. Without a single announcement or rule change, the entire atmosphere of the dining room had shifted. True leadership flows from embodied presence rather than imposed authority. When we alter our own conduct with intention and consistency, we create an invisible field that invites others to remember their own capacity for grace. This influence operates through example rather than instruction, through being rather than doing. The art lies in making subtle adjustments to your own behavior while resisting the urge to correct or rescue others. Each small shift in your presence creates ripples that others unconsciously detect and naturally align with. The key is to maintain unwavering commitment to your own practice while allowing others complete freedom in their response. Stanley Burke discovered this principle while managing deliveries for a regional warehouse. Rather than implementing new efficiency protocols, he began treating each package handoff as a moment of focused attention. He would pause briefly, make eye contact, and ensure clear communication before moving to the next task. Within a month, his team's error rate dropped significantly. Workers began mirroring his deliberate approach without any formal training or directive. The warehouse's reputation for reliability grew, all through the power of one person's committed practice. This form of leadership requires patience and trust in the process. It means maintaining your chosen standards regardless of immediate results. It means offering your presence as an open invitation rather than a demand for change. The practice begins with selecting 3 specific individuals in your daily sphere. For each person, choose one visible habit that embodies your transformed identity. Maintain this practice consistently for 1 week before moving to the next person. Crucially, offer no explanation or commentary. Simply model the behavior with quiet conviction. This 3-week portal plan serves as a laboratory for ethical influence. By focusing on your own conduct while remaining detached from outcomes, you create space for authentic transformation in others. The key lies in maintaining your practice regardless of whether others choose to follow. Chapter 30. Destiny as a Deliberate Creation. Agnes Rose spread the worn community maps across her desk, her fingers tracing the familiar lines of streets and alleyways she had documented for decades. Something called her to redraw these paths, not as they were, but as they could be. She began marking new connections, here a footpath through an abandoned lot, there a bridge across a stream that divided neighborhoods. To her amazement, within months of publishing these updated maps, life began flowing along these reimagined routes. Children discovered the footpath, creating a playground where there had been only weeds. Neighbors built the bridge, transforming 2 isolated communities into one vibrant whole. The map had become a blueprint for reality. When you author destiny, you aren't merely dreaming. You're composing a new reality through 4 essential elements: vision, embodied practice, covenant, and iterative correction. Vision provides the blueprint, but it must be grounded in daily physical practice. A covenant creates accountability, while iterative correction allows for natural evolution and refinement. Your role is that of a steward rather than a dictator of fate. Like a gardener who prepares the soil and tends the plants but ultimately works in partnership with nature, you create conditions for destiny to unfold while remaining responsive to life's organic flow. Harold Dean understood this principle through his work as a clockmaker. When tasked with repairing the town hall's ancient timepiece, he noticed its rhythm was slightly off from the natural cycles of local life. Rather than forcing the town to adapt to the clock, he carefully reconfigured the gears to match the community's natural patterns. Within weeks, something extraordinary happened. The adjusted clock tower became a harmonizing force. Market days naturally aligned with its chimes. Community gatherings found their perfect timing. The clock didn't control time. It revealed its natural flow. This same principle applies to authoring your destiny. The key lies not in forcing outcomes, but in aligning your vision with deeper patterns while maintaining steady, embodied practice. Your 5-year vision should feel like a natural evolution of who you're becoming, supported by quarterly practices that ground this emergence in daily life. The Destiny Workbook practice invites you to write a detailed 5-year vision as if already lived, focusing on who you've become rather than what you've achieved. Break this down into quarterly identity practices. small, consistent actions that embody this future self. Finally, make one public accountability promise that commits you to this path, not through force, but through steady, devoted practice. This isn't about controlling the future, but about becoming a conscious participant in its unfolding. Like Agnes's maps and Harold's clock, your destiny work creates a framework through which new possibilities can naturally emerge. Conclusion. Looking back across the journey of transformation, the true purpose of the self-shift formula emerges with crystalline clarity. This method isn't merely about personal reinvention, it's about aligning identity with one's deepest calling. Like a master key that opens not just one door but reveals an entire pathway, the formula changes who you are at such a fundamental level that your very presence begins to magnetize the opportunities, relationships, and circumstances that support your soul's work. Consider how Lillian Ward, a former accountant, discovered this truth. After applying the formula's principles, she found herself naturally drawn to teaching financial literacy in underserved communities, work she had never imagined, but that perfectly expressed her essence. The shift in her identity created a gravitational field that pulled her toward her authentic vocation. To maintain these profound shifts, 3 essential practices emerge as your daily maintenance manual. First, the morning and evening anchors. Those small rituals that remind your nervous system of who you've become. Second, the monthly audit where you review your identity markers and adjust what's no longer serving. Third, the 3-minute rehearsal that keeps your new self fresh and responsive rather than rigid. The ethics of identity craft cannot be overstated. This power to reshape self carries profound responsibility. Like any spiritual technology, it must be wielded for service rather than manipulation. Marcus Chen, a business consultant, learned this lesson when he discovered that his identity work was most powerful not when used to dominate markets, but when applied to create value for others. The sacred art of becoming requires protection. These practices, the small rituals, the quiet moments of alignment, the gentle corrections, are not meant to be rushed or treated as mere self-improvement techniques. They are sacred technologies, passed down through generations of wisdom traditions, now translated into contemporary form. The true mastery lies not in reaching some final destination, but in maintaining the practice itself. Identity work is not a project to be completed, but an art to be lived. Like tending a garden or tuning an instrument, it requires regular attention and care. The small rituals, a morning affirmation, a midday posture check, an evening reflection, become the framework through which ongoing transformation flows. This manual for living is both simpler and more profound than it might appear. It doesn't demand hours of daily practice or elaborate ceremonies. Instead, it asks for presence, consistency, and reverence for the small acts that, performed with dedication, reshape reality itself. The 3-minute rehearsal, done with full attention, carries more power than hours of half-hearted effort.
If you enjoyed this exclusive audiobook, I handpicked this next book which will change your life.